Good morning and welcome to our By the Book YouTube channel. It's brilliant to have today another author join me, another best-selling author, Andrea Mara. Hi, Andrea. Welcome to the interview today.
Hi, thanks a million for having me, Rachel.
So we'll just kick off, and you might just, for anyone watching, give us a little outline, who you are, and maybe a little bit about your books as well.
Yep. So, Andrea Mara, living here in Dublin. This is my home office, and I've written 5 books, but I started out with a career in financial services. So this is all still relatively new to me. It was a redundancy from financial services in 2015 that kind of gave me the nudge I needed to start writing. And I'm still here in my home office, 5 books in. So hoping to stick with this now for the long haul.
Yeah, fantastic. No, I was reading up a bit yesterday and I noticed, yeah, we might start there, just that career shift. Reminded me actually of Sheila O'Flanagan, who had a similar background and went from financial services, which is quite a shift. So you might just go back and tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I was there for 17 years and I absolutely loved it. I worked in the IFSC in Dublin for a French bank, small branch of a big bank, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I know, I'm sure lots of people will be like, how could you enjoy financial services? But I just did lots of spreadsheets and projects and deadlines and people, like being in an office with people. And I really, really liked it. And I saw myself being there forever for the rest of my career. And then one day they said, actually, we're going to close the Irish branch and the work is moving to Luxembourg or India. Would you like to move to Luxembourg or India? And I was like, I don't think my kids would be thrilled if I pulled them out of school, or my husband if I took him out of his job and we moved to Luxembourg or India. So the alternative was redundancy. And like at the time, I probably took it way too personally. I was really, really upset because I felt like I had been really loyal to the company. And I mean, 7 years later, I can look back and go, come on, like in any given company, especially a big bank, a big financial services company, we are just numbers and they are a business and they have to get on with things. And it wasn't personal. But at the time, I felt very stung and rejected. And oh my God, I thought I was here forever and I'm not. Um, but it all worked out really well because I had started blogging a couple of years before the redundancy happened, and it was about it's called Office Mum, and it's about trying to juggle kids and work. Because at the time I had just gone back to work after my third maternity leave, and I was feeling really kind of stressed and addled, and I was thinking, how do people do this? How do you work full time and have 3 kids or however many kids in childcare? And it just felt quite impossible. So I couldn't find any blogs or forums at the time. Now, there are loads now, but this is going back to 2013. I couldn't really find anything. So I said, okay, I'm going to try writing a blog. So then that blogging led on to freelance writing for magazines and newspapers. And when I was made redundant, I said, okay, I'm going to give this a go and see if I could make a living doing freelance writing articles for newspapers and magazines, and then that in turn morphed into books. So that's the long story.
Oh no, that's really interesting and good for other people watching, especially when you touch on, that personal feeling of, I suppose, rejection, when it's not personal, but that feeling that you have been loyal and you've worked so hard at something and then it's just pulled from under you one day. So it was brilliant that you decided that was the time you would try something else. It was good in a way that you had already started it, so it wasn't completely going into something new. But that actual writing process, was that something always within you? Did that just come about? Did you develop that with the blog, do you think, or was it always there?
I think it came with the blog. Like, I know, you often hear of writers who started writing in their teens and their 20s and were always writing in the background, whatever the day job was. And I'm not one of those people. I was busy with my spreadsheets, happy out. The things I was writing were like emails for work. So that's it. I mean, I loved writing in school, but it's same as anybody, I think most of us probably loved writing in school, but nothing much in the meantime. And it was really only when things started to feel on top of me and I needed an outlet, and I found blogging was like free therapy. I could sit down after a long day of work and kids and all the rest of it and let it all out, typing away on the laptop at night. And it was really free therapy, and I absolutely loved it. And that was the realization then that I enjoyed getting it out, but also enjoyed then the feedback and the response, and that people were actually reading it and engaging and commenting. And, you know, I set up all the social media channels to go along with the blog, as everybody does. So I was, you know, I would share a post on Facebook and lots of people would reply going, oh my God, I'm the same. I found it really lonely when my first baby was born, or whatever the topic was. And it was a nice feeling of solidarity that we were all in the same boat. But like, it is that thing as a writer to have an audience. And I know first and foremost, we all probably start out writing for ourselves, but there is something very gratifying knowing that other people are reading and that they're relating to what you're writing, that it's resonating with them, that they're interested and that they want to hear more. So I think that was the springboard then for really continuing to do it and eventually turning to fiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's so nice to be able to relate to people in that way. And I mean, you were opening yourself up quite personally in that blog, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I think as well, when your kids are small, the problems are very universal, and they're not personal to your children. So it's very easy to open up. So like if I'm saying, "Oh my God, I want to go to sleep under my desk. I'm so tired because my baby was awake all night last night." And all the other parents are going, "Oh my God, my baby was awake all last night too. And how is everybody coping with work? And how many coffees can we possibly have to keep us going through the day?" And that kind of stuff. And so, you know, you're opening yourself up, but it's very universal. So you don't really feel like you're giving too much away, or you're letting too many people in. It's different when your kids are older. Like mine are 10, 13 and 14 now, and I don't really blog anymore because like it's far too individual. They are, you know, teenagers and a preteen, and like anything they're dealing with is between them and me and my husband, and you know, it's not going on the internet. So yeah, there's letting people in to an extent, and
Yeah.
then your gut tells you when you need to just stop now. So
Yeah, and that's good advice for anyone listening, especially around the gut part. I completely agree with that. But that's lovely that you sort of you started this thing, you built a community, you got a taste for writing, you obviously got you know, interested in it. So then how do you go from that to being a fiction crime writer?
yeah, so like I always had stories rattling around in my head. So like say I've used this example before, so apologies to anybody who's heard me say this, but I think it probably typifies it. So like if I was sitting in a video conference at work, and if it was maybe a less than interesting one, and I'd be sitting there looking at the conference room in Luxembourg, and my mind would start to wander, and I'd be thinking, imagine now if masked gunmen broke into their conference room over there, and like we'd be watching it on screen, watching what's happening. But would we call the Irish police, or would we call the Luxembourg police, or what would we do? And this idea that you would be just, you know, a few feet away from the screen, but actually you're hundreds of miles away and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's just one example. And certainly when I had kids, the what ifs grew exponentially, of like, oh my God, what if I lose them in the playground and I can't find them, kind of stuff. So the stories were always there, but none of them ever, like I would think, God, I wonder, could I write a book? And then I go, oh no, God, a book seems very long. I can't imagine writing a whole book. And then one night on Facebook, I put up some post about something or other, working mom stuff. And there's an Irish author called Margaret Scott who followed the blog. And I didn't know she was an author at the time, but she commented saying, have you ever thought about writing a book? And it was the nudge I needed. Like, I think I just needed permission or a push from somebody else, because literally the next morning, I started typing the first word. So it's absolutely down to Margaret Scott. If she had never said that, or don't know if I ever would have tried writing fiction. But yeah, I started the next day, and that was a book that eventually, like 3 years later, became my first book, The Other Side of the Wall. It went through a lot of change after those first initial words were written, but that's how it came about.
Wow. Oh, I love that. Well, I've never heard that before. That someone would have started. And again, for anyone, I just think that's lovely, giving each other encouragement and commenting. Like, that's the positive side of social media, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I think I'm a huge believer in chance conversations. Like
Mhm.
I think you never know when you're chatting to someone how much something you can say might resonate with them, or even that small bit of encouragement you might give them could be exactly what they need. So I'm always very conscious now. If anybody says to me, I'm kind of thinking about writing a book, I will always say to them, you should absolutely do it, and here's how to get started, because that's what worked for me, and maybe I'm speaking to somebody else who needs that nudge like I did.
Yeah.
Someone who just needs to be told what to do all the time instead of going and doing it themselves, and there are lots of us out there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very conscious of paying it forward.
Yeah, lovely. And maybe this interview, someone is watching and they're getting the nudge that they need by hearing that from you today. So thanks for sharing that. So we'll talk then about, so the first draft. I'm assuming the first draft is done before you start looking for an agent or a publisher, or because you hear different things. Some people just do 3 chapters, or where were you at in the process?
So I had been told, and it is true, you need to write your full manuscript before you start looking for an agent. Now, there would be exceptions if you're already established, like if you're a well-known person, whether that's on social media or on TV or whatever, and that's a bit different, because if you already have a platform, agents and publishers are going to be a bit more interested. But for all of us who are just regular people in regular jobs and would like to try writing, you really do need to write the full book first.
Okay.
And I remember finishing my first draft and being all excited. And I messaged Carmel Harrington, who I was in an online writers group of hers at the time. And I said, okay, I'm finished the book. What do I do? And she goes, so now you go back and you rewrite it. And I was like, wait, what? And that was quite the shock. But she's absolutely right. Like, your first draft is just your first messy draft. And you have to go right back to the start and go through the whole thing again and keep revising and rewriting and editing and be, it's hugely self-critical, and cut out all those unnecessary words and pare it back to what the reader really needs to know. And then honestly, I think when you finish your second draft, you go back and do your third draft. Now, I think there are people who, everybody knows their own level, and certainly people who are published authors would be comfortable enough sending a first draft off to an agent or publisher, or a second draft. I'm usually on about draft 4 before I'll send it to anyone. But that's just, I don't edit as I go. I just get from start to finish. So my first draft is a complete mess every time. But I enjoy that process of going back then and going through it. So yeah, like if you're starting out, get the first draft done, rewrite. And only when you think it's in the best shape it can be, that's when you start looking for an agent. And agents will have different requirements, as I'm sure lots of your viewers and listeners will know. Some of them will want 3 chapters, some will want 10,000 words. So you got to read the submissions criteria very, very carefully. Make sure you follow them to the letter. Make sure you've no typos. Make sure it's absolutely as good as it can be. And then you start sending out.
Mm-hmm. And would you go to anyone, I suppose, an editor that you knew, or a friend that you knew, or anything, just to, have second eyes look at that draft?
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. If you've got someone you trust, it's really, really good to get their feedback. I know that people always say, don't just give it to your family because they'll be too nice. But I would also say, don't give it to somebody completely, far away and maybe a bit too objective, because you don't want to be eviscerated either. Like, I've heard of people who got bad feedback on a first draft, as in, when I say bad feedback, too much criticism on a first draft, and it just stopped them writing. And it took them a few years to get back into it. And then they eventually realized, I'm thinking of one example in particular, eventually realized that the person who had sent them that criticism wasn't you know, coming from the right place. So be careful. Like I sent mine to my three sisters who are all crime readers. They love crime TV shows, crime books. We've all four of us have always read crime. So I wasn't asking them, you know, is this terrible? And they were never going to tell me if it was terrible, and that's fine. I didn't need to hear that at that stage. I was asking them, did you guess the reveal? Did you guess the twist? Did you work out what was happening? So it almost making it easier for them, I suppose, because it was a very black and white kind of a question. They either guessed it or they didn't, and that worked well. So now I still send them my early drafts before they go off anywhere else, so that they can have a look and tell me, did they guess the baddie? And that works really well for me. So if you have, I would say, don't rule out someone in your family, like, you know, and actually it's okay to hear, yeah, that's really good. That's actually, sometimes we just need that boost. I sent my first one to my husband, and he's like way too critical. So I don't send anything to him anymore. He gets into really nitty gritty detail, and I'm like, okay, you know what? You can read it when it's published. So sometimes we just need positive feedback. And really, what is there to gain by somebody telling you it's terrible? There's nothing to gain. Like, go ahead and send it out to agents. And if you don't get the feedback you're hoping, or you don't get representation, you know, maybe then you can go back and look at it again with fresh eyes yourself. Maybe then you can take a chance on going to somebody a little bit further afield who will give you a more objective opinion. But I'm not sure you need to be torn apart in those early days.
Great advice, Andrea. I completely agree. You know, there's a nice balance to be struck there. And I like that approach of, you know, saying to your sisters, look, you know, this is what I'm looking for. You know, and out of interest, have they ever come back to you and they've said, yes, it's too predictable?
No, not so far. Like there's little things, like say with Hide and Seek, which is the book that's just out at the moment. One of my sisters did pick up on a clue, but I kind of looked at it and I pared back the mention of the clue, so it doesn't jump out quite as much as it did. So in the final version, it's not quite as obvious. But I do think it's important that some readers do get to pick up on the clues. And like, I know, and it's probably taken me 5 books to realize this, and feedback from readers on Instagram in particular, and people will say, I picked up on that and that, but I didn't guess this, and I didn't guess the ending. So like, if you keep too much back from the reader, this is very specific to crime, I suppose. But if you keep too much back from the reader and don't give them a chance to guess, then the ending is they're just blindsided by it and maybe going, I didn't see that coming, but it's not satisfying. Whereas readers do like to be able to pick up on some of it. So that kind of feedback was from my sister was really, really useful.
Well, that's nice to hear. So then we'll move on. So in terms of yourself getting published, how was that process for you? And did that happen, you know, how long did it take you, I guess?
Very long. Well, like I had written my first draft, and I had edited, and then I kind of got put off the whole thing. I just thought, oh no, this isn't actually any good. And oh, I remember now what happened was I did Date with an Agent, which used to take place in the Irish Writers Centre. I don't know if it's still on anymore. And it was where you submit your first chapters, and a number of people get taken to meet with agents. And of course, it's very exciting because everybody secretly dreams that the agent is going to go, oh my God, I love this. Let me snap you up immediately. And that doesn't happen at all. And the agent said to me, okay, I like your first 3 chapters, but from your synopsis, it looks like you've written a mix of contemporary domestic noir with a historical epic saga. And like, that's 2 different genres. You can't do that. And I was like, oh, I was coming at it, I wasn't even in the writing world in any way, and I hadn't done any courses, I hadn't spoken to writing people, and it hadn't dawned on me that you can't do that. I suppose you can if you're really super established. I'm sure Stephen King can absolutely do that if he wants to, but as a newbie starting out, you need to just stick with one type of story so that a potential publisher knows where on the shelf to put you. So I kind of felt a bit like, oh God, no, I'm just going to put it away. And I did for a bit, but then Margaret Scott, who I mentioned earlier, she was at a launch one night with her editor from Poolbeg, who's her publisher, and her editor was saying, "Oh, I've read this book by Shari LaPena called The Couple Next Door, and I'm kind of looking now for manuscripts like that." And Margaret knew roughly what I had been writing, which was about a house next door, and I think even the title like resonated, and she said, "Oh, actually, I know someone who's written a manuscript that's somewhere along those lines." Actually, my working title at the time was The People Next Door, which we had to change because it was too similar to The Couple Next Door. And so Margaret said to me, "You should send that in to Poolbeg," and I did. And Poolbeg came back and said exactly what the agent had said, which was, no, this is in two different genres. You cannot do that. But we do like your writing. So if you want to put together an outline for a different idea, we'll consider it. So earlier when I was saying you have to have the full manuscript done, you do. But because they had seen, I suppose, sample writing and felt like there was a possibility that maybe I could make this work if I had a better outline, they were prepared to go with that. So I worked on outlines, sent another outline through, and they said, "No, that doesn't work. Try again." So I tried again. And like, you have to have a thick skin. You have to just tell yourself you're going to keep going, even when someone is saying, it's no good. So I sent through another outline, and this is all taking place over maybe a period of about 5 months. And they said yes to that one. And they said, "Yeah, we like that one. So we'd like to offer you a book deal. And can you write that book really quickly, please? Because we'd like to publish it next spring." So that's how it came about for me. So then I did 3 books with Poolbeg, who were my first publisher. And then I really wanted to widen out and get a deal with a UK publisher if I could, so that I could have books in UK shops as well. So I looked for an agent and signed with my agent about 3 years ago. And then with my 4th book, which was all her fault, she got me a deal with Transworld, who are part of Penguin Random House. And so that's who I'm with now for Hide and Seek and All Her Fault, and my next 2 books as well. So
Yeah.
like, it's, it's a long road, as it is for most people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it was actually kind of third time lucky with Poolbeg in terms of getting the structure right. And then it sort of, after even the 3 books, there's that next level where you want to take, as you said, and go outside Ireland, which was actually a question I had for you in terms of, sales outside Ireland. Like, obviously Ireland is such an important market, but how important is it to get outside and try and build your profile outside, in the UK, in the US, for example?
Yeah, like, everybody's got different goals, and there are lots of authors who are with Irish publishers and they are doing really, really well. And their books are on bookshelves in every single Irish bookshop up and down the country. And that's a really lovely feeling when you walk into any bookshop. You're in West Cork on your holidays and you walk into a bookshop in Clonakilty and your book is on the shelf. Like, you just get this kind of fizzy, excited feeling every time. But I just really wanted to see, could I go further? And I suppose that was part of why I started writing a book in the first place. I was motivated by thinking, okay, this seems like an awful lot of work, but I don't want to turn around in years to come and go, could I have done that? Should I have done that? So it was the same with trying to get a deal with the UK publisher. It's like, I could just keep going and having my books in Irish bookshops and be really happy with that. But will I wonder in years to come if I should have tried harder? Should I have tried to get my book into UK bookshops? So I'm really glad I did. And obviously, the bigger the publisher, the better the marketing budget is. Like, a huge amount of this comes down to marketing budgets, and everybody knows that. Like, if you're with a very small publisher and they have a very small marketing budget, there's only so many books you can sell, because it's hard to get into bookshops. It's hard to get on a nice table in the bookshop that people will see when they walk in the door. For ebook sales, much of it is driven by ads on Facebook and Instagram. So there is a big incentive there to be with a bigger publisher. Now, of course, the downside of that can potentially be if you're with a really big publisher and you find yourself kind of lost in a sea of other authors, because obviously the bigger the publisher, the more authors they have. So, there can be a downside to it as well. And I do know people who prefer to be with a smaller Irish publisher and just happy out, keep writing books, keep seeing them on Irish bookshelves, and not feel lost among hundreds and hundreds of authors as you might with a bigger publisher.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And have you ever, so all your books are standalone? So yeah, and have you, because I've seen a few, that I can see the Irish crime writer author group very much growing, which is lovely to see. There's a lovely group, and I can see across social media there's such lovely collaboration among that group. So I was going to ask you about that, how important is that side of things, author collaboration? But also, have you then ever thought about a series in terms of developing a character and running a series, or are you very much, no, I got the story, I got the plot, and standalones?
Very much the latter. Like, I would never say never. Like, I guess often when people write series, it's because they've come up with a character that they absolutely love, and they want to have that character book after book after book. And for me, I come up with the story. Every single book has always been about the story first, never the character. And it's about the plot and the twist and the hook. And, so like, say with hide and seek, for example, it was based on my little boy going missing during a game of hide and seek. Now, happily we found him, but I came home thinking, God, imagine if your kid was playing hide and seek and you never found them. So that was the hook. And then when I decided to write the book, it's like, okay, why did the child go missing, and when did the child go missing, and who took the child, and so on and so on. And once I had the answers to all those questions, I had the outline. And then the characters are the people who need to be in the book to tell the story. And then once I get into writing it, I start to really enjoy the characters, especially the side characters, because they're the ones you can have fun with. Like, you want your main character in my kind of books anyway, I want them to be someone who's quite normal, because the idea is that they're ordinary people to whom extraordinary things happen. So they need to sort of be quite normal, everyday people, like your next door neighbor, or the mom at the school gate, or your colleague at work. And I want them to be likable and relatable. And then it's the other cast of characters that you can have really good fun with, because you can make them you can go to cartoon levels if you want to. And like in All Her Fault, I've got like some mean parents at the school gate who are really snippy to everybody, and like, that's really good fun to write. But always, because I start with the story and not the character, I can't see that morphing into being a series anytime soon. But sure, look, who knows what the future might hold.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear the perspective, behind it. And so then, in terms of author collaboration, I can see this is, like, as I said, a nice group of, it's amazing to see all the talent. And why, so the collaboration, and why do you think crime in Ireland has become such a big genre among writers?
I don't know. I've seen lots of theories. I know Liz Nugent wrote a really good article a few years ago, very, very good article, that it may be linked to, I suppose, we've had decades, hundreds of years maybe, of women being, pushed back in society. We've had the marriage bar. We all know the history there. We've had the Magdalen laundries. There's huge dark history in Ireland. So there is a theory that this is 21st century women coming out and putting all the darkness into fictional books, where in the past, I suppose, they didn't even have necessarily the opportunity to write these stories. I don't know, but I suppose it's a kind of a rising tide raises all ships kind of thing as well. So the more you have, it's almost becoming a brand, and the more you have this brand of Irish women crime writers, the more scope there is for this group synergy to exist. So I think that might be part of it too. And it's also really good fun, because when you're working from home, this is my office, I'm here on my own every day. The dog's downstairs. She's probably going to start howling in a minute now. But I have nobody to talk to all morning. So when we get to go to a book launch or a literary festival, it's euphoric because you get to sit down with people who do the same job as you, who fully understand what it's like, and you sit together and you talk all night long. And it is, oh my God, it's just amazing. Like I was at the Spike Island Literary Festival last weekend, and just you learn more in the chats in the bar after something like that than you can do in months and months of sitting on your own at your laptop. So I mean, from a selfish point of view, all the lovely collaboration is really useful in terms of just learning more and more about the industry and having a gang, having people to chat to. And I think that's a huge part of it for everybody. We all get a huge amount from it.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And then if I was to ask you, in terms of highs and lows throughout the last 5 books, or since you even started the blogs, what, you might just give us an example, either of a high or a low or both or whatever comes to mind.
Like it is such a roller coaster, because what I find is there's no such thing as an upward only trajectory. So you might see people on social media who seem to be going from strength to strength, and you do want to improve with each book, and you want your sales to improve with each book. And I suppose that's the bit you're going to show on social media, because like nobody's going to be like, oh my God, my book tanked or whatever, and your publisher would kill you if you did something like that, I imagine. But so, it is part of our job to share the good stuff on social media, and you see a bit of honesty on Twitter as well every now and then. But to be honest, like, you're not doing yourself any favors if you talk about the lows all the time. But of course there are lows, and I find every time something really good happens, I'm like, oh, this is it now. I've made it. And then something else happens and you're like, oh, okay, I haven't made it. But that's okay. That's just how it goes. And I would say, compared to my old job, the highs are much higher and the lows are lower. And that's okay, because the highs are much higher again. So that's okay. And like, I think one of the things that's hard is that it is a bit lonely. And like I was saying just there about the importance of getting together with the other authors, um, I remember a period of time during 2019 when I was writing All Her Fault. I hadn't signed with an agent yet, but I was frantically writing it so I could get it done as quickly as possible and start querying agents. And I had already finished the previous book, which was The Sleeper Lies, but I knew it wasn't coming out for a whole year. There was nothing really much left to do on it, but there was going to be this quite long gap before it came out. And I suppose it didn't help that we had sold our house and we had moved in with my dad, because we hadn't found a house to buy yet. So everything was a bit at the time. And I just remember feeling like, oh my God, I just want an email. I just want someone to send me an email and go, would you like to do this? Or your book has been nominated for, or something, because weeks could go by, because nothing needed to be done with the previous book and the next book wasn't finished yet, where nobody needed anything from me. And that can be quite hard if you're used to a job like my previous job, where every single day you're having interactions with your colleagues and your boss and different people around you. But now you're suddenly working on your own, and literally weeks can go by where nobody emails you or needs anything from you. So yeah, there are, and like, stuff like you can be put forward to something for something and you're excited about that, and then you get the news back that no, you weren't actually shortlisted, and you're not going to go on Twitter and be like, I didn't get shortlisted for that thing. You just suck it up because it's part of it. So yeah, constant highs and lows, I would say.
No, absolutely. I definitely think it's sort of up to you to motivate yourself every day as well. That's why community is important. But it's definitely one of those jobs, if you go down that route, unless you get up every day and give yourself that motivation, it is very hard to get it from elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then I just want to ask, I know we've touched on some amazing things and points, and there's definitely some key takeaways from this conversation. But I always ask, if anyone is watching and they are starting out, or again, they're thinking and they're looking for that nudge, what key pieces of advice would you give to anyone at that very early stage of their career?
The main thing I would say is just start writing, because like often I get questions from people a lot on email and Instagram DM, and people are asking, what tools do you use to write, or do you write by hand first and then type it up, or how long should your outline be, or and I will always answer those questions. The tool I use is Word on my laptop, and yes, I handwrite some notes first and so on, but in a way, none of that matters. What's important is you just start writing, because you could spend forever thinking about what kind of story you want to write, what genre is it in, how many words you want it to be, is it first person or third person, is it written in present tense or past tense. All those things can really tie up your time, and all you're doing is pushing out that moment when you have to just go and type the first words of your book. And that's the only way to write a book, is to type the first words, or handwrite the first words. So that's always what I say to people: just start writing. And the good thing is, nobody ever has to see those first words. You can delete them, you can put them away in a drawer, you can put them in a file folder that you keep on your laptop, where you keep all your old drafts, or your old work that never needs to see the light of day. So just write for yourself. Don't think about your audience or your future agent or your future editor. Just write as though nobody else is ever going to see it. It's a bit like the dance like no one is watching thing. It's the same thing. Just write as though no one will ever read it. Somebody who's very smart once said, the first draft is just you telling the story to yourself, and that's what you're doing. You're just trying to get the story down on paper to see if it works. And it's really only when you get to rewriting it, to do your second draft, that you might start to think about how a reader will read it. But for the first draft, that's just for you. So that's my advice. Just start writing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, great advice. The other question I have for you is, so I've noticed this amazing support for you on social media. There's tons of, even around your book launch, I couldn't believe how many photos, which was so lovely, people posted, and they were at your launch. And I just thought, oh, is that so nice? I just got that thing where there was so much support for you from, other authors, but just in general, the public. So what is your secret to that? Because yeah, social media can be challenging and hard. So the question is twofold. What do you do on social media to kind of have that following and goodwill, I suppose you'd call it? And what would be your advice for others because I think that's one of the biggest challenges today. People are starting out and they think, where do I start with social media? So I'd just be interested to hear your view on that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I'm lucky in one sense, because I started my Instagram account back in 2013 when I started blogging, and it had nothing to do with books, because I didn't know I was going to write a book. So it was really just all about my kids, pictures of cake, pictures of Dún Laoghaire Pier, the odd picture of a book I read, but not a lot of book content particularly. And so when I started writing books, I still just carried on using Instagram the same way as I always did. It was called Office Mum until last year. I only then changed it to my name instead. And so a lot of people I connect with on Instagram are people who I had connected with long before I was writing books. And I think it can be hard if you set up an Instagram account. A lot of authors are like, oh my God, I need to set up an Instagram account, but I don't know what to put on it. And I think it can be hard if you're only putting book content. It can be hard to get engagement if you're only talking about your own books. If you put other people's books up, that gets lots of engagement. But if you're just trying to talk about writing your own book, I think it can be hard to get people interested if you're not yet established. It's different if you're established. And so I would always say, and I know not everyone agrees with this. I think other people would say, no, stick to your own book. That's what you're here for. That's your brand. But my own experience is that keeping Instagram organic and talking about anything and everything, still putting up the photos of the sea and the Aperol spritz and the dog and whatever, is, I find anyway, more interesting for people who I'm connected to than if I was just saying all the time, okay, I wrote another 2,000 words today. To be honest, they weren't great and I'll probably delete them. Yeah, a bit of both is good. So I think, yeah, try to be authentic and organic on Instagram or any social media. Instagram is my favorite. I think for anyone starting out, Instagram is the place to be. It's got a lot of book content. Books are very visual. The covers are beautiful. So if you're reading a book, put up a picture of that book, make a nice picture. Look at the Bookstagram accounts. They make such beautiful pictures using the print copies of the books. And you'll get engagement bit by bit because other people will have read the same book and will be interested in chatting about it. There's an amazing Irish community of Bookstagrammers, and they're all pals with each other, and they're all really positive, open, welcoming people who love talking about books. So seek them out and have a look at the kind of books they're posting for a start. It's really good for getting recommendations for books to read. Their photos are beautiful. They write reviews in a way I never could. I have a complete inability to write a review of a book. All I ever can say is I really liked this book. That's all I can do. But they write amazing reviews, and they're really super friendly, lovely people. So, follow their accounts and chat to them about the books that they are reading. And that's another way of building up connections on Instagram. And it really is a lovely, welcoming place. And in my opinion, much nicer than Twitter. But that's personal opinion.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. It's been such a lovely conversation. I've taken so much away. It's been lovely to meet you. I wanted to congratulate you on your success, especially your last book. Well, your last two books. I've seen them everywhere across social media. I've seen fantastic reviews. They've obviously gone into the bestseller list, which is brilliant. And you're such a lovely person. You deserve every bit of success that goes with it. So I suppose my last and final question is, where can people find out more? You've obviously touched on follow you on Instagram, but also what's next for you? What should we be looking out for?
Well, the next book is out next summer. It's called No One Saw a Thing, and that's in edits at the moment. So I'm about to get my third round of edits next week on that. And then I'm kind of working on the one for 2024 at the moment. So I kind of have a week at the moment in between before I'm due to get my edits back. So I'm having a bit of fun with that because it's nice knowing it's not due in until I think next April. So I have a little bit of time. And I have 40,000 words written on it that I wrote last year. And I'm looking at it going, okay, this needs a bit of changing, but I'm enjoying it because there's no pressure yet on this one. So yeah, that's what's next. Hide and seek is still pretty new. So I suppose I'm still promoting that one as well. So a few different things on the go.
Yeah, wow, amazing. No, I think it's like people, I think, underestimate from an author's point of view, the amount of work that has to go into the promotion while you're still getting those next book outs at the different stages, and trying to, switch from the different modes of promotion to the writing to, being active on social media, being seen on social media, and still engaging with your readers. So it's multitasking at its finest.
Yeah, no, it is because and I know I was talking to, I was doing an interview on the radio, and I was answering a question about some characters in hide and seek, or a theme in hide and seek. And then it was only after the interview ended, I realized that actually the characters I had in my head are from No One Saw a Thing, and it had nothing to do with hide and seek at all. It was kind of a similar enough theme. So I think I got away with it. But yeah, well, this is it. And it's kind of All Her Fault is on special offer at the moment. So I'm kind of promoting that one on Amazon. And then Hide and Seek is the current one that I should be really focusing on. And then edits for No One Saw a Thing. But I'm actually really writing next year's one, which I call the Attic book. So
okay, well, I look forward to continuing to follow you, see your continued success. And it's officemum.ie. Is that your website?
Yeah, the website. I also have the domain name andreamara.ie because I was like, what is Office Mum anymore? No one is going to know what that is, but that still works. Yeah. And I suppose the main places is Instagram. So I think I'm there as Andrea Mara author. So that's probably the most current, and that's where you'll get me.
Yeah, perfect. Well, look, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And it's been lovely to meet you in person.
You too, Rachel.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.